Good afternoon. I'd like to call the, oh, sure. Good afternoon. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Today is the Parks and Recs meeting, and if you'll please stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Director Olteen, can we do roll call?
Here. Commissioner Armstrong.
Here.
Commissioner Boley.
Present.
Commissioner Coladonato.
Present.
Commissioner Davis. Commissioner Diaz is absent. Commissioner Goodman.
Here.
Vice Chair Navarro.
Here.
Commissioner Pace is currently absent, and Chair Young.
Here. And a report on the posting of the agenda.
The agenda for today's meeting was posted at City Hall, the city's website, and at the Leisure Center last Thursday, May 10th, by 5 p.m. per required policies and procedures.
Thank you. Correspondence, I see we have marked for none.
We have none.
Great. For public comment, at this time it has been set aside for members of the public to address Parks and Recreation Commission on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Commission. Although the Commission values your comments, pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take action on any items not listed or posted on today's agenda. 3 minutes are assigned for each speaker, and you'll see this chair directly across from me. If you'll come up and announce your name clearly and tell us what you'd like to discuss. Jerry.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Jerry Berry, and I live in the Four Seasons community at the north end of Palm Springs. When it's real windy, my husband and I love to walk in Ruth Hardy Park and the Wellness Park. It's a beautiful park. We love going there, but it's become uncomfortable for us to go there because of the number of off-leash dogs. Last week, we were accosted by 3 different groups. One was particularly aggressive with a Irish setter who claimed that it was our fault because we didn't recognize a friendly dog when we saw one. It was his right to have his dog off leash. It seems like a lot of the owners who use that park consider it to be a dog park and consider it possibly as their own backyard. These people are becoming rude and confrontational, so much so that we haven't been back since the last time, which is a shame. It's a beautiful park. It's our park, and we feel we can't use it. It's our suggestion that this body requests that some official steps be taken to let the people know that this is not a dog park, and dogs are supposed to be on leash, not off leash. I know there are a number of signs there. I don't think signs do any good because people ignore them. Our suggestion is that a request be made again by this body to the police and or the animal control folks, whoever it would be appropriate to do so, is to monitor that park closely, but to do it in plain clothes and in marked cars. Because the minute a police car pulls up, those leashes come out, they get snapped on, and you're not going to catch anybody. And a few people need to be caught and given first a warning, and if it continues, a citation. Word will get out quickly if that happens. But if it's clothed police officers, they'll see them coming and they're not going to do anything, and nothing's really going to change. And something needs to be changed, or else this park will become a dog park. It won't be for the general public. So that's the request my husband and I are making, is that there's some official request made that actual monitoring of the park and citations and warnings actually be issued. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Next speaker. Come forward, please.
Is it time to talk about pickleball?
Time to talk about anything from public comment. Thank you.
My name is Michael Riando. I live in Canyon Sands. I'm here to advocate for more pickleball courts at Demuth Park. My understanding of the background is that there have been some tennis courts converted already, others left for tennis. And I understand that there's an interest by tennis players to have courts available to them. As a pickleball player, what I experience at Demuth Park is routine waiting because the sport is becoming very popular, and watching tennis courts that are almost always, I can't say always, but generally unused. I also understand there may be other places in the city where a focus on tennis could be retained. I hope that's the case, because those people who like tennis should have a place to play it. So thank you for making the pickleball courts available, for maintaining them. It's a fun sport, and I'm hoping that we can have more of that available to us. Thanks. It's R-E-A-N as in Nancy, D as in dog, E-A-U.
Any additional speakers? Hi.
My name is Jason Martinez. I'm the Vice President of Palm Springs Youth Baseball. And as of August, I'll be the actual president of the league. We are here today to again discuss our Field 6 being named after Jared Doherty, which would be called Country's Field 6. Jared was from T-ball on Palm Springs Youth League player. I coached him until he was 10 years old. We had multiple championships together, and he helped me with my T-ball team when he was older. He's done a lot for the league. He's represented Palm Springs very well, and he passed away last May, and we're ready to do something in his memory. And I don't know, I didn't know if I was supposed to come and talk about the whole thing because I did this last month, so I was fully prepared. And I'm sorry, but Jared was a great kid, and he great ball player and loved it. It wasn't about being on his phone and tablet. He was about being at the park, helping us wherever we needed it. And I hope that we could get this field. I believe it's the only field that has it's just called Field 6, so we just want it to be called Country's Field 6.
And that's Country's?
Country, yes. Reason behind that? I guess his dad's side, mom and dad's side are from Oklahoma area, and their parents would be here now, but they just had a tragic loss, and they're back in Oklahoma again. So they've had a tough year.
Just so the public understands, the reason we are actually able to stop and ask a question, this is on our agenda today, so just some clarification does help us a little bit.
Okay.
We thought we were removing it because we realized the family was not able to attend today.
Yes.
And I'm not sure if it might be more appropriate for us to wait until they come back.
It's fine. The father texted me
Okay.
and asked me if I could make it. He said if not, that if I came to table it, but I let him know I would come through with it. Actually, there's a few people here for it.
Great.
Or a couple people.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Any other speakers? Please feel comfortable to come forward. We're a friendly group.
Hi. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read this on behalf of Cassie Doherty, who's the mother. My name is Gia Donati. Good afternoon, members of the commission. My name is Gia Donati, and I'm reading this letter on behalf of the Doherty family. Regrettably, they are unable to attend this due to another tragic death in their family. So this is Cassie talking to you guys. I want to talk to you today about why I would like Field 6 at Demuth Park to be named in his honor. My son died tragically and unexpectedly on May 8th, 2017, just 3 weeks shy of his 8th grade graduation from St. Teresa's School. He was an active member of the Palm Springs community, from being a resident and attending Palm Springs schools from pre-K to 8th grade. His intention was to play for the Indians at Palm Springs High School. Jared played with the Palm Springs Youth League since he has been 5 years old. He assisted in winning many league championships, including being selected each year to play on the All-Stars team. He played every position requested by his coaches with spirit, pride, and true sportsmanship. He exemplified great character and respect. Jared dreamed of being a pitcher and a catcher. His dream came true by becoming the Bombers catcher for the last 3 years. As a true leader on and off the field, he lived life with a passion for helping others, which was seen during his time with the Kelsey Heroes. It's an organization for disabled children, and they help them fully participate in the game of baseball. Jared enjoyed assisting these kids as well as sharing his love and passion for the game with them. My son had such a zest for life. His desire and passion for the game was unlike anyone I've known. It would be a true honor to me and our family to have the 6th field at Demuth Park, a place where 3 generations of baseball was watched and played, to be renamed Country's Field 6. I thank you for your time and consideration. And just on a separate note, I've been to school with her son, my 2 children, and their family has come from a big community of service here. The grandfather is a general manager of Victory Tile. The grandmother is our 1st grade teacher at St. Teresa's. Jared Sr. Is a retired CAL FIRE firefighter, and Cassie is a RN at Eisenhower. So we would like to ask for your consideration.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, too.
Any other speakers? With that being said, public comment is now closed. I saw David step in earlier, but I'm not sure, is there a city manager's report or a manager's? Okay. We'll move on in the agenda to our discussion items for the day. The first discussion item is based on recycling. We actually have a presenter from the Sustainability Commission here to talk to us, follow-up to last month's conversation. So, Rob?
Do we get you up and running, or do we want to wait for IT and we can move, maybe have a brief discussion?
Is she still
on-
working on it? Okay, we can.
Maybe we can have a brief discussion since Commissioner Coronado asked that the item number 2 be on the agenda. I know we talked about potentially pulling it because of the email I got yesterday, but if we want to at least have a general conversation about it, to maybe put a plan in place so that by next month we kind of have an idea of where we're going and what we're going to be doing.
It is true that the field is available. There's no other name put on that field. Is that correct?
It's field number 6.
Okay.
None of the fields have names except numbers.
Okay. I thought field 5 had a name, but
Field 5 was named in honor,
Okay.
wasn't renamed Lauren Argy. Lauren Argy was the city's sports coordinator prior to me coming on with the city. And when he was killed in a car accident, they put a plaque out there on a rock, not on the field, but a rock up on the hill, and it had in memory of Lauren Argy sports. He was a city employee, so
okay.
the field itself wasn't named after him. It was kind of in memory, kind of like we did with Joe Winters down at Field 7 and 8.
Right.
I'm wondering, is there anything in our master plan that allows, disallows, or is this strictly a commissioner's, opportunity to put together a request? Obviously, I don't think it's something we can do. I think we would have to recommend the request to council. Vicki, any background on this?
There's nothing in the master plan, and currently, right now, the city doesn't have anything on the books of naming facilities or city property after anyone. I know when we were going through the campaign of raising funding for the skate park, there were a number of people who came forward with large sums of money, but the city was adamant that it would not be named after anyone. It was going to be the Palm Springs Skate Park and not the, Joe Smith Memorial or whatever. So at that time, so as far as I know, there's nothing in place for naming facilities. We do have, if you want to buy a tree and put a plaque on it, we have that program in place. You could buy a bench. But as far as actually naming fields, facilities after anyone, there currently isn't a policy or practice in place. And it would have to go to city council, whatever this body would recommend, it would be city council would have the final say on whether it would happen or not.
What I'd like to do is, Johnny, can I ask you to set up a meeting for you and I and Christy Holstitch to just discuss this? She's our representative and liaison to the council to determine how we could proceed with this. And I think it is something that we should give strong consideration to, but I want to make sure that we're operating within the guidelines that the city has. And I understand that with fundraising coming forward, there will be some opportunities for additional namings that are associated with fundraising, but I'm not sure that something like this would be inappropriate. So, Commissioner Armstrong.
Vic, I have a question. Several years ago, there was a community group that came and wanted to rename the swim center, right, after a well-known athlete who
Yes, they
trained
did.
there.
Right.
And as I recall, the former city clerk who was attending our meeting said that it was outside the jurisdiction of this commission even to make recommendations. Was that incorrect, or has something changed?
Well, at that time, Jay was speaking on behalf. Yes, technically they should be going to the council, but it would be nice if they came before us, especially if they're looking at a Parks and Rec facility to be renaming. Again, we're just an advisory board, so the real push will be actually going to council if that's the direction that the commission would like to move in. But yes, Jay did make that comment.
Right, so I just wanted to point that out, that in the past, we did tell the community that it was outside the jurisdiction of this commission to engage in this discussion even. It's important that we have criteria, and that's what we should be looking at. There's many, many worthy people in this community, and we could name many things after them. And so we have to have some criteria. Just when we place things on the National Register of Historic Places, there needs to be some objective criteria. Otherwise, people are going to come with all sorts of worthy people for all sorts of naming. So I would hope if you guys are going to go to a subcommittee route, that seems like you're doing, that we come up with a standard policy for this. Otherwise, it's going to be an untenable situation. I think I'd raised several years ago, if we get another dog park, I would like to name it after Officer Ike, who died in the line of service, the police dog. And it was so many problems, even for the idea of a future park, let alone something we have. So I think we have to play fair, and we have to have a procedure.
Hence, talking with our liaison, and I am not appointing a subcommittee. I've just asked Johnny to set that meeting up, and the three of us will attend it. Commissioner Goodman.
Yes, Chairman, if possible, I'd like to attend that meeting as well.
Absolutely. Any other discussion on the opportunity to rename? Great. We're good? Okay, let's go back up to item number 1 for the recycling. Rob?
Thank you. I'm Rob McCann, and I'm the chair of the Standing Committee on Waste Reduction with the Sustainability Commission, and these are my co-members, Roy Clark and Jessica Spry. And we talked to you all last month about the issue of recycled containers in the public parks, and I'd like to give you an update today on what's been going on since then. I wish I could put this into slide mode, but I'm a little bit challenged with PCs and was unable to do it, so. A little bit of background in terms of history. One thing that happened in the last month is that Travis Armstrong sent us an email trail from 2015. And this was the most germane email in it. On August 22nd, Ken Kershaw sent an email to Michelle Michian saying that recycling receptacles had been placed in the following locations, in the following parks. And what we have done since then is we've gone out and done a site inspection to see what the current status is of those recycled containers. The areas that I've got here in green have containers, and the areas in red do not. So this is what it looks like right now. Demuth has a recycled container in a picnic area and one near ball fields 7 and 8. Over in Ruth Hardy Park on the west side of the tennis courts, that's the recycled container that is there as of this week.
The other 3 locations that were called out as having had receptacles placed in them in 2015 do not at the present time. Instead, Baristo has 5 or 6 just waste containers. Sunrise Park has, in the area of the picnic tables, has a waste container as well. And then up in Victoria Park, there are new containers that have just been placed there in the last month or so. But again, waste, not recycle. I'm going to come back to this one. This was interesting. That's why it's interesting. And so I'm going to come back to that. So I think that what we've established there is, despite the 2015 activity, there is a current need for recycled containers in the parks. And we've done some due diligence over the last 6 weeks or so. We've identified what we think are viable candidates to put in the parks. We have about $13,000 in funding that the city has got from soda tax revenue. And we need to spend it by June 30th, so there's a bit of a short leash on this. We identified the following 7, as you can see down here, and then we went through, and we basically just tried to come up with some empirical evaluation of them so that we can make an informed decision and a down select. These are all features up here that we think are good ones to have for a recycled container. Written labels about what should go in the containers. Pictograms, quite a few of them have those that show people throwing the correct kinds of things in the cans and bottles. The Mobius arrows, you're all familiar with those. That's the universal symbol for recycle. Circle opening, we think that that's really good if we can define a type of opening that is exclusive to recycled containers, and in many of them it's a small round opening. So do these containers have that? The blue color coding, I've got it in blue for various reasons. One is that I think it's probably the most important feature of all. It is becoming the universally recognized color code for a recycled container, and you all know, if you have residents, that's the recycled container color for PSDS pickups. Then there's a bunch of features that are on the dimension of how easy is it going to be to maintain these and how easy is it going to be to service them. One of them is, does it have a side access, which makes it difficult to reach in and actually steal the stuff that's inside. Another one is, can we mount it in the ground? Stacy has told us in the past that in previous years, these types of containers in public parks, people have actually picked them up and rolled them and done various things to them in sort of the vandalism sphere. Chain securable. This is another one that I think is important. The current trash containers that ring the swimming pool at Sunrise Park, there are 10 of them around there. And the park employee, when I talked to her about it, said they have to make sure that they are up against the pillars, because even trash containers, let alone recycled containers, people have had fun with them at night and actually taken them and rolled them into the pool and this sort of thing. So they need to be secured. So we evaluated all of these options against these features, and this is the one you'll see here that came out on top. The only thing that option C doesn't have is pictogram labels. And of course, there's always the option for us to take stickers and that kind of thing, and we could put them on ourselves. So we bounced that off of our subcommittee, and we bounced it off of Stacy, and we got unanimous consent that this is probably the best one to go with. And just a few more details on it. It's a company called Trash Cans Unlimited. The cost is $339 per receptacle. With our funding, that translates to about 35 containers. So with that, I want to show you a little bit more of a larger picture about what the situation is with trash containers now in the parks and what we think we have as a solution to them. So the photo that I'm showing you on the left is coming outside the library in Sunrise Park. And you'll see that on the left, that's a trash container, and on the right, it's a recycle container. The trouble is, as you can see, the two containers are virtually identical. One of them has just been modified a little bit to make it into recycle. There are symbols and signs on the other side of it. Otherwise, though, they're very similar. We think that that's very bad. We want to put recycle containers in that are as distinguishable in terms of their function as we can possibly get from the trash containers. And so that's what, with my very poor skills at morphing into what we would like to see on the right, that's what we'd like to see, basically. We like this container. I mean, it's got some drawbacks for trash, but it seems to be becoming the city standard in very many places. The brown with that little stripe on the top, the green stripe. So if we simply replace the one on the right with our candidate trash or our recycle collector, that's what we would like to see in all the parks pretty much everywhere, is pair them up so that you've got a trash and you've got a recycle sitting next to each other. That will clean up several issues. I'm going back to the trash containers now, not the recycle containers, but just to show you how much variety and how much heterogeneity there is in trash containers now in our city parks. It's just amazing, the breadth of styles and types and colors and that sort of thing. These are all from Sunrise Park, but we've got similar issues in some of the others as well. So if we could replace those with one standard trash receptacle, we'd be ahead of the game. And things actually just got much more interesting in this dimension of how distinguishable the two are or potentially will be. In February of this year, we did a survey in the parks and took photos of the trash containers, and that was the container that was in the middle of Sunrise Park. And then we've gone back just a couple of weeks ago, and these old dilapidated trash containers are getting replaced by brand spanking new ones. The trouble is, as you can see, and they're in Victoria Park now, as you can see, the trouble is that they're very easy to mistake for trash or for recycle containers because they're bright blue. So they're kind of the opposite to what we're aiming for. And they are getting implemented right now. Some good news, and I want to show especially, so this is a zoom out of the recycle container that I showed you that exists in Ruth Hardy on the west side of the tennis courts. This is actually the situation there, is that there is now one of these new containers sitting that close to it. And so this is just going to be very confusing for people, we believe. The good news, Stacy, do you want to say anything about, you got wind of this yesterday, and you said that we may be able to take these containers out once we do get these new recycle containers in. So I've got a follow-up question for you. If the brown ones that are becoming the standard in the city, if there are still leftover brown ones, can we replace these with the brown ones? Are they able to be deployed?
Yeah, the reason we have the blue ones, they're put on the sports fields so they can be moved around when the guys are doing the mowing and the seeding. They weren't supposed to be permanent places.
I'm sorry, I didn't really understand.
They're lightweight so they can be moved around when the things are getting mowed on the fields and seeded.
So they're more temporary?
Yeah.
Ah, very good. I have a suggestion for the usage of them as far as temporary containers are at the end of this presentation. Okay, so that's good. So do you know anything then about the brown ones, the ones that are...
Well, they're very heavy to move. So you need like a forklift that are heavy, yeah.
So they could just stay there? They could be
They're
permanent.
stationary, yeah. So you couldn't have them in a sports field. They have to be on the edge of a park or somewhere.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Now, let me just jump out for the last couple of slides. I'm almost done. With the larger picture, which goes beyond the parks to all public areas in the city and commercial areas. We have exactly the same issues in our public areas, on our public streets. Right now, it's a hodgepodge. There's no set style for either recycle containers or for trash containers, and so you get this hodgepodge all over the place. These, I think, are particularly germane to let you know what we think the problems are. This is a sticker that says this is a recycle bin, but as you can see, it's virtually identical to the trash bin that's right beside it. So again, going further on down, if we can get more funding and if we can get more of these new recycle containers, we should probably try to replace them so that we would have something consistent across the parks and the public areas. And just to illustrate that point even further, it would sure be nice to try to implement that inside commercial establishments as well. This is some examples of what we have now. Blaze Pizza, this is a recycle container supposedly. The new Starbucks, again, it's for recycle side, it's the wrong color, it's brown. Here's a couple of examples at the airport. One of these is supposed to be a recycle container and one is a trash container, but all they've got to differentiate them is the sticker. So we would sure like to develop something that was in a general policy that we would be able to give to everybody, and eventually people would start to follow. And I have one more slide that doesn't appear to be part of this presentation, so I'll just talk about it verbally. The last thing is 35 new recycle containers. We won't be able to pair up with every single existing trash container in all the parks. There's not enough. There's more trash containers than that. So we would love to get some feedback and some input on where we should actually deploy these. What's the biggest bang for the buck? Where are areas in the parks that people think are most likely to require these bins for recycle? Roy.
One thing to add, I'm Roy Clark from the Sustainability Commission. We're talking about purchasing containers as soon as possible using FY 16-17 money, and we have the deadline of the end of June. We have an equivalent amount of money available in 17-18, so we can probably buy about the same number of containers relatively soon. So that should be able to be factored into our plan.
Can I ask a question?
Actually, before we start opening up to the floor, I would like to ask Commissioner Armstrong if, as the liaison, he has anything that you want to add or before we open it up to the floor.
There's a couple of things. I want to thank you guys for coming, but I wanted to provide a little background. So when I was on sustainability worked with parks to place these 8 to 10 trash cans or recycling cans, and it took an incredible amount of time, over a year, to get them in the parks. Even though the money was available through sustainability, there were a lot of issues raised about some of the things that you've covered. It's disappointing that some of them are not there. I don't know what happened to them. It was a surprise when you guys said they weren't there. I wish I had one looked at them after they were put in, so I don't know how long they have been gone. But one of the discussions that happened in 2014 and 2015 was just incredibly, should we have recycling in the parks? And there were some people that had reasons why they thought they shouldn't be. But the commission, and I think if you go back and look at the minutes, is on record of having recycling cans in the parks, and it was stated by the city clerk at that time that this was his words, a baby step. That the intent was to replace or replace trash cans and add recycling cans throughout the park till we got to the point that we were actually doing a large amount of recycling. So that's the only point I have, is that it's disappointing that what happened, but it's great that you guys are taking this up, and that we're already on record as wanting more trash cans. So hopefully we don't go through this debate again about the wisdom of having recycling in our parks. So that's it.
Thank you. Johnny.
The cost of the trash can, if we buy more, do we get a break on cost, or where did the $340 come from?
I don't believe that they're giving us much of a discount beyond the $340. I'd have to check and see whether there might have been a $20 or $30 reduction for this bulk purchase, but it wasn't much more than that.
Do we get, is that tax, license, everything included?
The only thing I know that they said that was included was transportation.
So they would deliver them to us? obviously.
They would deliver, and Dan DeGarmo has a quote from them already. I think that to get 35, we're about $1,300 short with that 13,000 that we get from the soda tax, but we've got our own funding that we can supplement it with.
Thank you.
Question I have, can you take us back to the picture of the recommended item? It looks to me from this angle like that circle would be indicative that you should drop cans in here. Is the indication that we should be putting recyclable garbage as well? Because I'm just wondering, it seems as though that might be indicative to somebody, oh, circle, I should drop my cans, my bottles, but I don't know what they would do about the paper and if they're separating trash at a picnic.
We're caught between a rock and a hard place on this. They're ideally, everywhere in the world, a trash container would be a big square instead of a circle, and a large size, and that would define this as a trash receptacle. Meanwhile, the recyclable containers would be a small circle, but for paper, the option is you can put a vertical strip through the circle, and then it could take both paper and cans and bottles. This funding that we have is very strict, apparently. Colors of money, they will only allow us to buy containers that are for cans and bottles, unfortunately.
Okay, that explains part of the difference, because we were asked by the city council to view the containers that were being placed on Palm Canyon at, I'm not sure what it's called, the La Plaza, and there they actually had can recycling right above trash, so it was clear that you could drop those in.
That's one of my, we can take a look at that. It is in my, where is it? Somewhere. There it is. That one right there.
Wrong color, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So Jeff Coors asked us for a recommendation about these, because these are on loan in some way. I'm not quite sure how, and they have to make a decision very quickly about whether to keep those downtown or not. Our recommendation was not, again, because there's no color coding on these things. So we don't think that they're the best possible. And if there's room, it'd be, again, better to go with a dedicated trash can receptacle and a dedicated recycle.
Well, to Commissioner Armstrong's point, my belief is there should be no question about whether or not we should be recycling in our parks. I think that shouldn't be revisited at all. My hope would be that we would be going with some level of recycling. I was just hoping for, I walk the parks a lot, and you'll see a picnic on Sunday morning or Monday morning especially. You'll see just bags of trash sitting next to the cans because it's too much for the cans. And I worry, are we losing the opportunity to get stuff recycled because we don't have containers there? And would this give us enough? But my personal feeling is we've got to start someplace. But I'm also a little concerned about what Commissioner Armstrong said about the fact that we were there before and they've fallen by the wayside. So I think securing is really going to be important as well. Any other comments or I think we are probably looking for a motion on this order.
Well, they're looking for your input, because it sounds like they're ready to purchase them. So if the commission is ready to have them move forward, then yes, we'd need a motion to accept their recommendation. Or
Commissioner Goodman?
I'm just curious if, I'm assuming that Stacy, your team is already tagged areas where these 35 cans would go. I mean, that would fall in your team?
Hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
But that certainly is a step that we need, is where to deploy them most strategically.
Right. And there is sounds universal, there's a consensus with Stacy's department and sustainability that this option is the best option for your department. Okay, so I'll make a motion that we suggest that you go ahead with the best selection, the best option for the department to be able to get these purchased before June, end of June.
Second. Any conversation? on the issue at all?
I just want to reiterate what you had said, and I think it's great to be doing this. I think it's great to have a place for bottles and cans, and it just would be super wonderful if we could get containers that had all recycled materials. It would be great if our city started to compost. I mean, it just would, it's so thoughtful, and I don't really see moving the needle forward because there's really still going to be separation of trash and confusion, and I think, and I'm not saying, not every single person, I know many don't travel outside of Coachella and the Inland Empire, and so universal signs, and it might not be in everyone's awareness, but I do think we're going in that direction. So I ultimately would like to see an all-in-one recycle container, and I would like to see the city start to look at options for composting.
And those are things that we have been talking about in our committee.
Yes.
So just on the citing, are you asking us for some input, or do you guys want to take that on yourself, working with Vicki and Stacy, or?
If you have the input, if the information exists in this body, we would love to have it. I don't know, Stacy, again, whether you guys are the ones that might have this knowledge. At this point, I certainly do not.
I think the big thing for us is obviously going to be the need to place them where we can secure them. That's a requirement, which obviously means we're going to need to stay wherever we have either concrete pads or an existing slab. So that's pretty limiting right off the top. And I think really that's going to dictate it. Otherwise, we're going to have theft. They're just going to be gone.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm thinking, and hopefully you'll all agree, is that we'll go ahead with the vote. But as an aside, we'll give you the list of the ambassadors for each park, and you could work with each ambassador if you wanted to just kind of glance at their park. You can't have a meeting all together. It would require being noticed, but you could talk to each individual ambassador about their park. And, you know, I'd be willing to do Ruth Hardy or Wellness. I think, Alan, you and I are sharing that park. But so that we could look at the park with you and realize we're not going to have enough for every park, but I would hope that we would drop some into every park. And then the ambassadors could work with you to cite the number of locations for what we have now, and then the next, 5 that will go in, or whatever the next delivery could be, so that we've got a plan for it. Does that work for everybody?
I might suggest, because that's going to be incredibly time-consuming for you and for our staff, so it might be better if we give you maps of the parks and your liaisons can priority 1, 2, 3, and then we can respond back.
Commissioner Goodman?
So you could do that, and if you could base it on where you believe that the flow of traffic, so, right, I would think that where
Frequency.
there's landfill and trash, there's going to be recycle, because I wouldn't know that.
And we'll, before we send it out, we'll put in our highest frequencies, so to give you an idea of that.
And obviously, Vicki'd be copied on everything that goes to individuals.
Actually, it'll go to Vicki. Vicki will be
She'll
the one to send it out.
Perfect. Thank you very much. With that being said, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That takes care of that. That's passed.
Thank you,
very
Commissioners.
much.
We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for all your work on this. We really appreciate it, and for giving us the opportunity to work with you. Commissioner Caldonato, pickleball courts.
Yeah, thank you, Michael, for coming in. We do appreciate it. So, I've heard this from a number of pickleball players, and it's exactly what he said. The pickleball is growing so much that those feel, I don't know what we can do, but I was asked to find out if what the cost of resurfacing 2 tennis courts into pickleball courts, what that cost would be. Because I think we did that at DeMuth Park.
So we've had a vote on this previously, and that vote was that we were not going to just convert the last 2 pickleball courts, because there is a tennis community that lives at DeMuth Park, and we can't say to them, you need to drive to another park. But we do have a subcommittee that's looking at other options, and I was hoping, there might be some creative options that would allow for a change and additional parks there. So I forget who is on that subcommittee.
Yeah, Jody.
Okay. Have we had a chance to consider options or?
Well, we spoke with, we went out to the park to Demuth with Commissioner Diaz and Dean Mangione, and he mapped out some space in the park across from the tennis courts and pickleball courts for a possible 2 new tennis courts. The problem is with that, where's the funding going to come from? There's been suggestions of maybe corporate sponsorship, but the whole thing of that is that's a lot of work to be done until somebody can move forward and say, we've secured this and with a plan. So that's where we are with it at this point. I mean, we've done quite a bit with restriping the courts, and the pickleball courts are used all the time, and we even played that night with some of the people that invited us out to play. And one of the tennis courts was being used, the tennis court was being used at that time. Another night I went out, it wasn't being used, but it's still, in our opinion, it still needs to be available, for tennis players. So until funding or a plan for funding can come about, our recommendation is to leave things as is until we can find some type of funding to accommodate the tennis players.
And I wonder, have you discussed the growth of the sport? So right now, if, let's just say 2 tennis courts get built and the 2 tennis courts get converted, is that really enough? I mean, are we really looking at what the sport's possibility is 4 years from now? Are we going to be back in the same discussion of more courts and more courts? I mean, is there, is anyone thinking that maybe we should look at maybe building a pickleball center or area or a whole new place? And I just would hate to think that 2 years from now, we'd have people back at the table saying, there's no room, we're waiting in line. So might be something to look at.
Well, I do know that if you convert 2 tennis courts into pickleball courts, you get 8. Right now, we have, I think there's 8 now, so with another 8, that's 16. And I know that if, as far as tournaments come, if we wanted to host a tournament, because when they have a tournament, they normally like to have between 12 and 16 courts. But so profitability, there would be some money coming in as far as that goes. And then coming back to it, what would the cost of building 2 tennis courts be? From what I've been told, there's a pickleball community out there that would be willing to fundraise, to come up with some money, but they don't know what the cost or where to put the 2 new tennis courts.
Vicki, didn't you look into that? Isn't it about 100,000?
About 100,000
Lighted courts?
lighted courts.
I would, maybe Dean is the person to talk to. What does the sport look like in 2021 or in 2020? I mean, maybe 16 isn't enough, is my point. And will we be back at this conversation in 2 years?
Sorry, it's not that we are ignoring you. It's just that public comment is only at the front end of the meeting, and unfortunately, we can't entertain comments from. Yes, I apologize. Commissioner Armstrong.
I have a couple comments. One, sort of piggybacking on Commissioner Goodman's point. I mean, there's also, I think, part of this discussion is what other pickleball courts are online in the community. It's a very popular sport. It seems like more and more are being built. So we don't also go to the other situation where we have an oversupply of them if we're going to have more in other communities as well. And we're told that people from other communities are coming here to play pickleball. So what is Palm Desert and Rancho Mirage doing? But one of the things that kind of concerned me about this on the agenda, again, is we did a really good job many months ago of outreach to the tennis community. And so there's no way I can see this body moving forward with any recommendation after we went to the tennis community, told them they could come and talk. The tennis community is not organized the same way as the pickleball community, it seems. And so we need to hear from them. And when they came, there was very compelling testimony, including one individual who talked that he would never play tennis if that wasn't for those courts. And so it's important that we have a tennis option at Demuth. But when we talk about pickleball and we're talking about, oh, it's so easy to pave these courts to pickleball, we need to remember we need to then go back and outreach to the tennis community so they can have their voice heard. Now, we've done that before, but the pickleball folks keep coming back and asking again to put this on the agenda. If this commission is ever actually going to make that decision again, we have to go do a good faith effort to the tennis community.
I'm not sure we would have to ask the tennis community if they want 2 new pickleball or 2 new tennis courts 20 feet from where they are, though. I think if they're getting what they have, and that's my hope, is that we would not consider converting until we had built what they have today. I've never seen people, and I go there quite a bit to see how the usage is, I've never seen people waiting to play tennis. I see 20 or 30 people waiting to play pickleball. And that's my concern. I agree with you, Commissioner Armstrong, that I would not close down tennis at that park. I don't feel it's right to that community to say you've got to drive 20 minutes and not necessarily be able to get on courts at Ruth Hardy Park, because those people are very practiced tennis players who are really quite
Territorial.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good. I mean, they are territorial, but I agree with you 100%. I wouldn't personally be able to vote for closing down the tennis courts, but I feel very strongly we do need to do something. I'm not sure how we move this forward. If we ask the subcommittee to come back and make the recommendation to build 2 tennis courts, and to then, once the courts are built, to convert the existing courts, and we go to the city making the recommendation that that be done. I realize there isn't a budget, but there are opportunities with, we've hired on somebody who raises funds within the city. If the community, if the pickleball community is willing to step forward and talk about some element of fundraising, we're entering a tough time, and as we approach the June elections, I'm just hoping we have, park facilities available, and that's certainly in question, but I'd like to see us, make some good decisions here. So, and are there any other recommendations other than what I've talked about with the action, asking the subcommittee to come forward? Would that please, or take care of the concerns that we have?
Well, I did hear a recommendation from the subcommittee that it stays the same for now. So I did hear that recommendation. And I mean, if you want to continue the discussion, maybe you need to do a cost analysis. What does it cost to build 2? And right now, we don't know exact costs from the city, and the city has to build it, and the city has environmental impact reports they have to do. I mean, there's a lot of costs that get added on than just kind of pouring the concrete to be able to play. So, maybe it is, what would the cost be for 2 additional tennis courts? And then what would the cost be if you built, not converted, but if you built additional pickleball courts? And if the pickleball community is mobilized and energized and wants to do a fundraising campaign, it actually might be cheaper to build new pickleball courts than building tennis courts. I don't know, because I haven't seen the numbers.
The only problem I have with that is when we did hear from pickleball and tennis people at the same time, they made it really clear that they don't like to be elbow to elbow when they're playing, because pickleball people make noise and tennis players are concentrating. I mean, that was very clear to me that they don't like each other, and it's easier to separate it. So.
It might boil down to money.
Seems to be that's what it's boiling down to anyway. I mean, I don't think anyone's opposed to building more tennis courts or pickleball courts. It's about the financing.
We don't know what it is.
Right.
But where would we build those 2 tennis courts?
The opposite side, if the fencing for the existing pickleball courts are here, on the opposite side of the walkway. like over by where the
Where the dog-
temporary dog park is, in that area over there. That was Dean's suggestion. But we had another question too, if the pickleball community is requesting additional pickleball courts, and the recommendation from the pickleball community is to build 2 additional tennis courts, therefore, the tennis people would be in a position to look to help find funding rather than the pickleball, because the pickleball people would just have to accumulate funds to restripe the already existing tennis courts. So that kind of puts the tennis community at a disadvantage as well.
See, I thought you would put all the costs together and satisfy all the costs. We wouldn't say to pickleball people, you just have to clean up the courts and convert. And tennis players, you need to have 2 new things built. I think, I would think we would throw all the costs together and say, how do we raise this money so everybody's
At
happy?
one time? Okay.
So, moving forward, Vicki, can you have somebody pull together real costs for
Sure, I can do that.
the location that we're talking about? And we should probably be addressing the other issue that would mean that there would have to be a relocation of the temporary dog park that's been there for 10 years or so.
Isn't there statutory law becomes permanent?
We'll need to address that as well. Alan?
On top of making information for cost-wise, we'd like also the cost of converting the tennis courts currently
Yeah.
and building the new ones too.
Right.
Need costs of converting the current tennis courts into pickleball.
Any other suggestions on that request to Vicki? Great. Johnny, does that answer and take
Yeah,
care of
I
everything?
think so.
Yeah?
Mhm.
Great, thank you.
Hey, Les, can I say one thing? Can I be part of that committee? Is there?
Sure.
I probably should get in on that a little bit.
You can be.
Perfect, thank you.
I'll appoint
Carol's leaving.
Johnny, since Carol this is her last meeting, so.
Oh.
You and
You're it.
Commissioner
Nice.
Diaz. We certainly don't have any issues with the number of people on the committee when it stays at 2. Great. The next item on the agenda is the discussion of recreation fees. What ended up happening as a result of our last meeting and our retreat was there was a discussion about, Commissioner Trent had requested how we felt about the inequitable expenses associated with the James O. Jesse Center held against the Leisure Center. It was a little untenable, and there was a discussion around using the same costs for the James O. Jesse Center as we would apply for the Leisure Center, so that one wasn't overly burdened with the expense, if you will, and it didn't look so out of line. We all discussed it, and from what we could tell from the tape, we all agreed. Unfortunately, what we didn't do is make a motion and actually approve or disapprove that motion. So I'd like to ask at this time if we can get a motion to do that. Commissioner Bowley.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we make the costs of both facilities even across the board.
So we reflect them evenly across the
To
board.
reflect them evenly across the board, yes.
Great. And a second to that motion?
Hey, Les, I'm gonna abstain because I don't have enough knowledge on it to make a good decision or a good vote.
Okay. Okay, I guess with no second, that doesn't pass. I'm not quite sure how we're going to turn this back to council, or how we have additional, yes?
There was something actually in the, that we went to this about what to do when there's not a motion, or how to retract it, or do a second, or, I mean, how to reword it. It was in the Roberts rules that got handed out yesterday. I noticed it in there, but I'm just kind of curious, and I have a few questions, and I don't know when we'll be able to ask questions. And so a motion came out very quickly, you need a second, and then there's a discussion. And so I just want to share that I have a few questions and would like to talk a little bit about the fee and what happened at City Council.
Well, and if the motion is made and seconded and a discussion is held, then a vote, and at that point in time, you can not vote or vote for a motion. It just can't be discussed until the second is made, and many times that does happen, and it is voted against or for. So if you want to go back and restate the motion and somebody wants to second it, we could then have that conversation. That's okay. Do you want to restate your motion? And
Okay, let's, based on the fees that we have for the two different facilities, that we follow, keep them even across the board for both facilities.
I think we're
For
kind of
the-
missing the point here. The two, it's not all the fees. We're only talking about the early childhood literacy program at Desert Highland and the Tiny Tots program being the same. That was the main issue that came up at the city council meeting, was the document presented to city council, had both of those programs being different. And Commissioner Pace felt very strongly that the commission had agreed to put those programs in line. And apparently I didn't get that when I was reviewing the minutes. So when I presented the document to the city council, it was, the ECL program was what was on the original document that Commissioner Pace had done. When I redid it, so it was set in place by here's the leisure center fees, here's the swim center, it was taken off of his document. We did not change in the document that I presented to council that the ECL and the Tiny Tot program would be on the same fee structure. And that's really what we're coming for you today. Supposedly, when this was adopted, and I think Commissioner Goodman made the motion to adopt this document that the ad hoc committee had put together, the fees for Desert Highland were different than what was for Tiny Tots. So this document was not amended. Only the discussion was they would like to have it be. And apparently that didn't get done from my part. So back before you again, do we want the early childhood literacy program to stay as it is on this document, which if it went down to 25%, they would be paying $72, whereas the Tiny Tot program, they would be paying $33.
Right.
So do we want to have the Tiny Tot program and the early childhood literacy being on the same fee schedule? And that's really what's before you today.
Okay. So from city council, my observation, what I walked away with, was that it wasn't per program. They actually didn't like the fee sliding scale, the fee structure that was presented to them. And it was my understanding that they were really looking for a price that was different for residents and non-residents, and it didn't break down to that. So now I'm a little
Right.
confused of.
But we're not addressing city council's concern. What I'm addressing is Commissioner Pace made an issue of the fact that his document didn't get updated to reflect his wish to have the early childhood literacy program to be on the same fee schedule as Tiny Tots.
Mm-hmm.
Since what went to council didn't reflect that, as you know, those who were there saw the conversation and what was being said. I was asked by Dr. Reddy to come back to you to say, do you want these two programs to be in line with each other, or do you still want the early childhood literacy program to be at a higher rate? Has nothing to do with what city council wants, because that's going to be a different story when we have committee meetings with them. So, because that, again,
help?
could all change.
Yes, I had no idea what was on the agenda. Yes, thank you.
So.
Commissioner Armstrong.
I guess I would just like clarification. What happened at the city council with our fee proposal? people are watching. I think when you didn't get a second, there was some concern. I'm thinking from some of the comment that the community made about the fee changes you're suggesting. So I think it's appropriate for us to be told what happened at the meeting and where our
It's a public
proposal is.
meeting. It is a public meeting, and we could certainly share with you the things that we recollect, but it is a totally viewable meeting that is available for all of us to watch if you weren't there. What I'd like to do, if we can right now, is stop conversation on this, get a motion for this one piece, which is merely to change the expense associated, which impacts the resident A fee through the document, so that we can have that discussion. If we get it motioned and a second, we can have the discussions necessary, get that voted, and then we can have, can we have the discussion about
Well-
the additional fees, since it's,
Well, there wasn't really, what really came out of the city council meeting is, Councilmember Holstig is to get with the commission to start looking at fees. And so, there was no recommendation to accept or deny what was being presented to them. So,
It was just that these two programs forgot to be amended with
just that
everything
one
else that-
fee,
Okay.
just the one fee for ECL was not amended
To align with all the other ones that.
to align with the
were-
Tiny Tots.
Okay, and it's something that Commissioner Pace just forgot to do, and
Well, his document didn't reflect that, so that's how I put together the document I gave to city council. Now, going back and reviewing the minutes, we talked about it being discussed at the retreat. And
to be included with everything, with all the other.
originally, his recommendation was that we totally eliminate that program altogether. Was underutilized, was too costly for the city, and then he came back and said, well, if we're not gonna eliminate it, then we need to bring it in line with the Tiny Tot fees. And that's the way, so commission we weren't doing motions or actions that day. So at the meeting on that following Tuesday, when the motion was made to adopt this document, the fee had not been changed on this document. So when it went forward to city council, it came with Desert Highlands fee being higher than the Leisure Center's fee.
And they pointed it out, and now they're asking us to.
make your statement.
Actually, Commissioner Pace kind of pointed it out, and Dr. Reddy's asked me to have you decide, do you want those two programs to be in line with one another, or to leave Desert Highland at a higher rate than what the Tiny Tot program is?
Can I just ask one question? Now, when we say make them the same, is it the lower rate or the higher rate?
It's the lower rate.
Yeah.
It will carry a lower cost
Right.
To both?
for both of them.
The EOC program will carry the same fee as what's set on the document for Tiny Tots.
Okay, now I understand, okay.
Commissioner Goodman?
No, I make a motion that we elect to have both fees be the lower price for both of those programs at Desert Highlands.
I second.
Second.
I second.
Commissioner Davis. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Two abstain.
I'm saying I'd like the minutes to reflect that. I was concerned about getting more information. The chair didn't really want to give more information, so I could not make an informed decision.
So we're good. Moving on to commissioners, or rather, reports and requests. Commissioner comments?
We have-
And I'm going back and looking, I don't recall anyone making a motion to approve the minutes,
No, we did.
Oh, you're right.
so.
Thank you for catching that.
I'm looking, thinking, I didn't write anything down, and where did I write it at, so.
So has everybody had a chance to review the minutes, and are there any corrections or changes? If not, if we can have a motion?
I second it. Oh,
Are you gonna make the motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay,
I'll second it then.
and Miguel seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I abstain.
Oh, you were out for
I recused myself from the meeting, so I wasn't here for part of it.
one abstain. Great. Item number 5, discussion of parks signage. Vicki?
Finally, so I sent out to you the schematics that were drawn by Mark Louis, graphic person who's operation and management of the skate park. So before you are copies of these signs that we're looking at posting. One would be on the back side, on the Ramon side. One would be on the skate park fencing, and the other would be on the wall of the swim center. And obviously, this is just a preliminary step, because once whatever you guys decide that you like, and if we need to change, then I'll need to go to the planning department to get them to buy into it before we can have the signs made and put up. So, comments from you, questions? I do think the skate park sign has a little too much on it. You know, I don't mind the camps and lessons and events. I don't think we really need to list their website. I think we just list the phone number. They can have the number there for them to call the shop to get information, just as if we would the swim center.
Or even making it probably smaller, that font, where it says shop online at www.
That would be advertised.
Yeah.
For a cost.
Are they paying for any of it, Vicki? Is there this,
No, they're not. This came up, what, 3 years ago from former Commissioner Aiello, who has been asking to have signs put up, because a lot of people drive by and they have no idea what's on the other side of the walls.
got it.
So
Do you
this
know,
has kind of been a work in progress. We finally have something, so we're looking to take the next step.
Commissioner Bowley?
Originally, when we approved it, we approved to put a sign on the fence on Baristo with an arrow pointing, I thought give them directions, because people see
And
it.
it's there already.
There is, that one is there?
There's a street sign, yes.
Okay.
It's right around by the bus stop. It takes you to the swim center and to
Yeah,
the
it was
skate
agreed
park.
that it would actually be a road sign and not the sign that was actually on the fence. And so the road sign went up, but we've been waiting for something that's on the fence that says, hey, this is a skate park. So,
But we talked, if we put it on the fence, a skate park, everyone thinks you can't get in there, from Baristo, right?
right, so the solution was
The street sign.
the street sign,
Sign.
Oh, okay.
instead of putting an arrow on that sign. Mhm.
Thank you.
Commissioner Caldonado?
what's the size of these signs?
They're 3 feet by 9 feet. 3 feet by 9 feet.
Commissioner Goodman?
So I personally really like the signs. I think they fit into Palm Springs culture. I really like them. I also like where it says camps, lessons, events, and rental. And I actually don't like that it advertises a retail store. I really think it just doesn't work on those kinds of signs, on these kinds of signs. And I would say that if the swim center, I like the way it's positioned with even less wording. It doesn't have camps, lessons, and events, though there is some benefit in saying, hey, camps, lessons, events, rentals actually happen here. So I like both of them. I think that he did a nice job.
Commissioner Bowley?
We do have a website for parks and recreations. If we were going to do a website at all, it would be more beneficial to draw people to our Parks and Recreation website if we're going to do it on the other one.
Right, and we could, and Action Park Alliance is part of, it's part of the recreation brochure that is on the city's website, so we could, that has that information, so we wouldn't necessarily need to list their website, but if you wanted, we could, the cities?
So it doesn't say rental, it says retail?
Oh, retail.
Yeah, so,
Thanks, Johnny, for
That's
pointing
all right.
that out. So I would say rental
right.
and cross out retail. And I do like the different signs, but I don't know why one has palm trees and the other one doesn't. And I mean, they're reversed. They would be hung on the building or the back, so I don't know if the skate park, that it has a light background, would pop because I don't know where it would be hung. So depending on the building color or the fence.
It's going to go on that black fencing that's on the Vermont
Okay,
side.
so it's on black.
Yeah.
If we continued without the website, would we leave their logo on there?
I would say not.
I would think not also.
Yeah. I have mixed emotions about camps, lessons, events, and retail. You take out the retail, I'm better, but if it's on one, it needs to be on both, in my mind, because, in fact, Palm Springs Swim Center does rent, so we could even include rental there.
Re-rent, resell things.
Yeah.
We have lessons.
I like the palm trees better.
Yeah, I do too.
So then it should be the same sign for both, so that there's consistency, whatever that design
Make
is.
them both like this.
And not have any, don't have camps, lessons, and
Well, put
rentals.
the skate park on the one and swim center on the other one.
And that-
We keep the same
Look,
look.
yeah.
But I do like the camps, lessons, events.
I mean, if you're gonna have something that large and you're gonna advertise something, if it fits, then, I mean, I think the one without it is cleaner, but it is an opportunity to, or I should say, it's an opportunity. What do you think, Vicki? Do you like one or the other?
I don't, you know, we don't really offer, per se, camps at the pool, but we offer more lessons. Where the skate park's more focused on, I mean, our camps really take place not necessarily at the pool, but at our other buildings. Whereas the skate park, they're actually running camps throughout the year, throughout the summer.
Do they have events?
They have a couple of events a year, right? The biggest one is the Elgato,
Right.
which is where they bring in the old pros that come in and skate and stuff.
She brought a newspaper clipping of it that happened in April. So not only do they do events, they get a little bit of publicity, and I think the community likes it very much.
I mean, if we're
Uses
gonna
it.
I'm in the sign business, so, you know, there's a couple things I see we could change, but, you know, less is more, quite a bit.
Would you
But-
put that phone number on there? How many
You
people
know,
are gonna
we,
call? Come
obviously,
on.
we got two different phone numbers, right? One's a skate park and one's a swim center, right?
Right, yeah.
Okay. Nowadays, everything is on the phone. They'll just Google that name, Palm Springs, Skate Park, or maybe Palm Springs Swim Center. Is that the names of them?
Yes, yes.
That's all you'll be able to get from the car anyway, if you're driving by, that's all you'll be
Yeah.
able to get anyway.
That's the whole thing about signs, and that's why I was asking what size, because size matters, you know, I mean, but at the same time, this stuff on the bottom, this logo needs to go. The palm trees are great. I mean, that is so much cleaner.
Right.
I mean, just look at them.
Yeah.
And so, when I sell a billboard, I hold up a billboard and it kinda looks like this, right? This is a 10.5 by 36, so I'll hold it up to my client, and we're about 10 feet away, and that's what you're gonna see. Right? So, I mean, 10.5 by 36 is much bigger than 3 by 9. So I think we don't wanna put too much on it. But, if we're gonna put any kind of website, it should be the Parks and Rec website, I would think, or the city's website.
But I think you're right. I mean, today, people are just jump on their phones, and I would think that if you see a pool, you might say, oh, I wonder if I can take lessons, or I wonder if I can have a party there, or, I mean, I would think that we're already programmed to think like that, and then you just make a call, so.
We don't put any websites on our billboards anymore, it just doesn't make sense. And even phone numbers, sometimes we will, if it's a 1-800 new teeth and you're a dentist, we get it, right? But other than that, it's just, Nike, just do it, you know? McDonald's, I'm loving it, right? So it's 5 to 7 words on a board is what you need.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we accept the sign that says Swim Center, and that the two signs are consistent with the same logoing, same font, and same information. We can drop the phone number and just have it be a statement of what it is, skate park, swim center.
Second?
I second.
Discussion? Let's vote. All in favor? Opposed? 7-1.
3 years later, congratulations.
Hey, I finally got his road fixed too, so, or I didn't, but
2
Public
years and
Works
1
did.
month.
2 years and 1 month, that's what it was?
It was April,
When he first brought it up?
yeah, when we voted on it, when I pulled it out.
Oh my God, 2 years, that was 3. Time flies.
Sort of feel like it's the Carol Davis legacy signs.
We got signage.
They're not up yet.
Really? Commissioners' reports and requests.
I hear
Commissioner
you.
Bowling.
I would like to mention that yesterday, several of us attended the workshop that was held by Eddie, our city attorney. It was videotaped, it will be available, and I recommend everybody that's on this commission to get a hold of it and look at it, because there was some valuable information on there. Things like sending out information that we might send out. Ellen, you can't send out an information signing it as a parks commissioner unless you get it from the parks commission. They were saying like things. I mean, just use you for example. We can't talk about something outside of the room and then come in and recuse ourselves from it. There was just some wonderful items there that it was really a great function that they did, and I hope the city does have more of those, because those things will come back to be useful for us and with the information. That said, something else was said, and we discussed it a little bit before. When we're out working our parks and doing things, I would like to add on to our next agenda possibly, is it appropriate for the commissioners to have business cards? I recently was at Ruth Hardy, and I would have talked to this person, but it was like, he didn't know me from the next person, but I just, something that was happening there, I would like to have addressed it and said, you know, I'm one of the commissioners, and I just wanted to bring this to your attention. Is it appropriate? Can we put that on our staff report or on our agenda to have? I know another commissioner said they had them in the past. That's all I've got.
Thank you.
Commissioner Armstrong.
All right. Well, this has been an interesting meeting. I think there's been a big elephant in the room, and I was able to access part of the last city council meeting, but not all on the website. And what I did view is I thought the commission came off very poorly, and there were some statements about the commission that surprised me. And we have nothing on our agenda today about really what happened. I'm told I should go watch the meeting. And also about the Head Start program and the Tiny Tots program. It was a very controversial decision. There's no recap from the chair, from staff, what happened and what's going next with that. But I was really concerned with the parts of the meeting that I did see. I also was very disappointed. I know that 4 commissioners out of the 9 voted for not to accept the school district proposal. But I was surprised then that there were visits organized to the Tiny Tots program right before the city council meeting with no opportunity for those of us who are concerned about serving the poorest among us with the Head Start program to organize a visit. So in the future, I hope the chair and staff think about those issues because I was very disappointed in how this has been played out.
Thank you. Commissioner Caldonado.
I'm good.
Commissioner McGill.
Just, I don't want, I didn't get her name, but her public comment was the first one of the off-leash dog.
Jerry Berry.
I don't want that to get lost, so if we could somehow bring it up again in our agenda next meeting, or have it discussed before it gets gone. That's it.
Great. Commissioner Goodman.
Yes, so a couple of things. I attended the city council meeting, and there were 2 topics. One was about the Head Start, and I actually was very, very pleased to hear that the school district was really looking at alternative programs that would accommodate all Head Start families, as well as every single family that participated in Tiny Tots, and that I believe it was a state program and not a federal program. We were not informed that the school district, we were not informed as commissioners that the school district had found an alternative. I think all of us heard it that night, but so that's a little information. I was actually quite glad that it was like, let's go back to the drawing board, because even though I wasn't in the room, it feels, with all the public comments, like a very important issue. I was actually quite taken back at the city council meeting around the fee discussion, and I felt terrible for the fee committee that did so much work looking at fees. Since I've been on the commission, I have heard that the city wants cost recovery. That's just what I hear, cost recovery, cost recovery. And I thought the commission did an extremely good job of making suggestions on really getting to cost recovery. And I know that one of the motions was taking into consideration staff, the demands that a sliding scale would have on staff, and to look at that really before putting anything into place. And at the city council meeting, it felt almost unanimous, at least it was my observation, that the city council did not want to increase fees and have Palm Springs residents get to cost recovery, and that it was stated a couple of times that visitors really should absorb those costs. And it didn't look, it just felt, for me, it felt terrible. It felt like the commission and the council had not had any conversations, which we haven't, and that we weren't working together as a team. And so I just wanted that to go on record. And I hope that in the future that when things like this come, that we all sit down and work together so that staff isn't blindsided and commissioners aren't blindsided, and it got very heated, and there were a lot of upset people in the room. So I just wanted that. I found an article in the paper about Riverside County, and it says Riverside seeks input on parks. And I know there's a big, in the election, there's a big bond that's coming up for parks. It says city kicks off a series of community meetings on Vision 2030 Master Plan. And they're going out and they're talking to the community. And so I'm just bringing this up because I do think that there might be something that we can learn from this. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. And if Riverside County's going out and talking to their communities about parks and master plan, and I think it might be something that we can glean from and learn from, so that situations like the city council meeting won't happen again. So that's all for me.
Thank you. Commissioner Davis.
I just wanted to say thank you for everyone. Today's going to be my last meeting, and I just want to thank you all for sharing all your gifts and talents with this commission. And I've really learned a lot from all of you. And basically, that's not it. Also, to what Ellen just said about what happened at City Hall, I would encourage you all to continue to push to make some type of connection with the city council to give more guidance to this commission, because it's truly frustrating to sit on subcommittees, to come and give of your time and efforts and do all this work, and they go totally a different direction. So that would be my last words to this commission. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Carol, I would like to thank you for 6 tremendous years. I've only been able to witness 3 of those years, but working with you shoulder to shoulder has been an honor, and it's been remarkable. I loved much of your support and driving things like getting signs and reviewing things and looking at things as closely as you have. So we have a little presentation for you that Vicki is pulling forth. And actually, Vicki can read for you.
Certificate of Appreciation presented to Carol J. Davis for 6 years of service and commitment to the City of Palm Springs, Parks and Recreation Department, and the Parks and Recreation Commission. On behalf of Chair Young and the rest of the commissions, we want to thank you for all your time and energy and efforts to help guide us in areas that are important to you, and making everyone see the light of your area of responsibility and bringing that forward and supporting not only the city as a whole, but the community of Desert Highland Gateway Estates. Maybe I don't really have any real updates. I might want to maybe touch on maybe a comment or two that Commissioner Armstrong had made. I'm not really sure what kind of information that you would want from a council meeting. I mean, I could always give you, as the previous directors have done, I could give you the synopsis of what was voted on, what would have came out of that meeting. But as a director, I don't always get to say what I want to say. I can only say what is asked of me. And I know that we were having some conversations at the meeting. I know Commissioner Young is like this, waving, trying to get attention to really address some issues that the school district had brought up that made it appear that the Head Start program was never an option for us, and that they just had this program that they developed that they were going to come forward with. And there were a couple of little things that, the issue of the Measure C agenda items, that was a hot topic of discussion of potential elimination of programs if that measure did not pass. And a councilman making comments of not basically saying, I don't know where you're getting this information, I don't know where it's coming from, but it was in a document that was given at a town hall meeting discussing the budget. And so, again, Chair Young made that point as well when he was up to talk about also the program that the school district talked about. So if there's something that you need me to do, I mean, I can bring you forward anything that the action that the council has taken on anything that's come before them regarding Parks and Recreation. I can do that. I'm more than happy to do that. But, again, as a staff person, unless I'm asked by council or the city manager, I'm not free to just say what I want to say. So.
Thank you. Well, as we bring this meeting to a close and look forward to our next meeting, June 19th, we will be doing so with some goodies that Vicki has brought for us all. So, closing the meeting. Thank you.